morning, committee, and welcome to any members of the public joining the 7th of January 2021 meeting of the Western and Southern Area Planning Committee, which is one of the 3 area-based planning committees of the Dorset Council. Our area of remit covers the previous Weymouth and Portland Borough Council and most of the previous West Dorset District Council areas. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Council has had to put in place measures to enable the Council's decision-making process to continue whilst keeping safe members of the public, councillors and Council staff, in accordance with the government guidelines on social distancing, by applying new regulations for holding committee meetings from remote locations. Therefore, this meeting is being streamed to the public, and a copy of the recording will be available on the Council website following the meeting. Members of the public are invited to make written representations, provided they are submitted to Democratic Services by 8:30 AM no later than 2 working days before the meeting. These representations will take the form of written statements of no more than 450 words, with no attachments, and will be read out at the committee meeting by our administration assistant. For the benefit of the public, my name is Councillor David Shortell, Chairman of this Area Planning Committee, and my Vice Chairman is Councillor Bill Pipe. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, everybody.
Introducing other members of the committee, Councillor Mike Barron. Good morning, Mike.
You are muted, Mike. Mike, you need to unmute.
Is that all right?
We can hear you now,
better,
Mike.
yes.
Great.
Glad to hear you're alive. Councillor Dave Bolwell.
Present, Chairman.
Good morning. Councillor Kelvin Clayton. Good morning, Kelvin.
Good morning, Chair. I'm here.
Good morning, Susan Cocking. Good morning, Susan.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning to you. Councillor Jean Dancer. Good morning, Jean.
Good morning, Chair.
Councillor Nick Ireland. Good morning, Nick.
Morning, Chairman. I'm here.
Councillor Kate Weller. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning.
Councillor Sarah Williams. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Chair.
And Councillor John Worth. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning to you all. For your information, a number of officers will also be involved during the meeting, and these will be introduced at the appropriate time. We will now be following the agenda set out in your packs. The first item on the agenda is apologies, and that is to confirm any apologies for absence. Now, the only apology I've received is from Councillor Louis O'Leary, who's engaged on other business. Declarations of interest. Does any member have any declarations of pecuniary or other conflict of interest, bias or predetermination regarding any item on the agenda?
Yes, Chairman, Councillor John Worth. I have predetermined this application, so therefore I will not be taking part in this discussion or vote, although I reserve the right as ward member to speak on this subject when it comes around. Thank you.
Thank you, John. John, can I just confirm that relates to item 5A on the agenda, and that's the land adjacent to Buckland House, Buckland Lane?
Yeah, sorry, Chairman, I didn't mean to tell you which one it was. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Chairman,
Yep.
Chairman, I'd just like to declare that I am a ward councillor for item 5A, the Buckland Ripers toilet block. Well, I'm just saying I'm a ward councillor.
Do you have any predetermination regarding this application?
Yes, I do. Yes. So I would like to speak as a ward councillor, please.
You realise, of course, you wouldn't be able to participate in the debate having a predetermination.
I do appreciate that, Chairman, yes.
Okay, thank you, Jean. Is there any other declarations of interest?
At this point, Chairman, I should say that we are not live streaming this at the moment, so the public are not aware of what we're up to. We may have to start again once they've started. I think Philip will probably update us on that. Is there anything you'd like to say, Philip?
Chairman, I think if the meeting is not can't be viewed by the public, then we should adjourn the meeting until the technical issue is fixed.
Okay, I therefore, bearing that in mind, I will adjourn the meeting, awaiting instructions from IT as to whether we can now then be streamed to the public. So,
Chairman, sorry if I can interrupt. It's Lee Johnson, one of the producers. We think we've sorted the issue. The meeting is actually live. It was just the video feeds we were having a problem with. So if you do want to carry on, I'll let you know in the chat bar if it continues.
do I have to repeat anything that we've processed so far?
No, the meeting has been live from 10 o'clock. It's just the video feeds we were having a problem with. So actually your video against the agenda.
Okay, so I can continue where I was. Is that right?
Yes, if Philip's happy with that, then that's good.
Well, Philip's actually in the chat bar suggested we should adjourn the meeting if the live feed is not working. Is it actually working now, Lee?
It seems to be. Let me just try. Yes, it seems to be working. So I'm going to send the chairman live again.
Right. So
yes,
with a nod from Philip,
yeah.
Philip, are we okay to go ahead?
Chairman, Vice Chairman, yes. If as long as we have a minimum of a working audio feed, we can continue. But ideally, the video feed should be working as well. But the legal minimum is the audio feed. So as long as members can hear each other and be heard by each other, and be heard by the public, we can continue.
Okay, thanks, Philip. I'll continue to monitor the chat,
Okay.
Chairman. I think you're free to crack on now.
You would. Okay. Am I okay to go on to item 3 on the agenda then?
I believe so, yes.
Item 3 on the agenda to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of December 2020. Has all members received a copy of those minutes?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
Okay, if members are content, I will sign those minutes as a true record of what took place as soon as I can get to the office. Item 4 on the agenda is public participation. The committee has received a number of written representations submitted in accordance with the amended speaking protocol effective from the 20th of July 2020. That is, the first 3 public statements received in objection, and the first 3 in support, including the applicant or agent, will be read out by an officer not involved in the application. The number does not include representations received from town and parish councils or by relevant Dorset councillors. The written statements have been circulated to all members of the committee prior to the meeting. We have one planning application before us today for consideration, and a comfort break of 5 or 10 minutes will be taken as and when is required. Right, members, we now take item 5 on the agenda, and that's planning applications. And the first and only planning application there is planning application 5A, which is WDD 20001703, which is land adjacent to Buckland House Lane, Buckland Ripers, DT3 4FT. Use of lands to site toilet shower block and erection of decking and steps. Now, this is a retrospective application. I now invite Emma Telford, the case officer, to introduce the item. Good morning, Emma.
Morning, and thank you, Chair. I'll just try and share my screen. Can I just check you can see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can see the PowerPoint. Thank you, Emma.
Perfect, thank you. I'll just change my cursor. Thank you, Chair. So this application is at land adjacent to Buckland House Lane, Buckland Ripers, and it's for the use of the land to site a toilet shower block and the erection of decking and steps. The application is retrospective, so the toilet shower block is already sited on the land. The planning application was granted in 2019 for the use of this field here, which my cursor is highlighting, for camping during the months of July and August only. This permission included a condition for a toilet shower block to be sited on the land between the 23rd of June and the 8th of September in any 1 year. The subject of this application is a toilet shower block to be positioned here where that red arrow is pointing, and this toilet shower block would be positioned on the site all year round. The next slide shows the site plan. So obviously you've got the access off Nottington Lane, and then this is the position of the toilet and shower block subject of this application. You can again see the field that's got the permission for camping here, and you've got Buckland House at the end of this access road. The next slide shows you the elevation drawings of the toilet shower block with that decking and steps to the front of the block. And then the next slide is the floor plan of the block. So you've got showers in the centre and sets of toilets either side. And again, you've got that decking to the front of the block with steps to access it. This next slide shows photos of the toilet shower block, and these are both taken from within that field itself. So obviously you can see the block and the decking and the steps there, and this one's just taken further away in that field with the permission for camping. The next sets of photos are all taken from Nottington Lane, as if you've come from Dorchester Road and Weymouth, looking at the site. So this one is where the block isn't visible yet. And then the next photo, obviously you're getting slightly closer to the site, and you can there just see the top of the block, the toilet shower block, as you're moving towards the site. And again, taken slightly closer, so again over the existing vegetation, you're seeing the top of that toilet shower block. Then as you move closer again, you're still seeing the top of that side elevation of the toilet shower block, and you're starting to see that fencing that was adjacent to it. Then on this photo, you're now more in line with that toilet shower block, and you are seeing obviously the top of the side elevation and part of the top of the rear elevation. I included this next slide to show the closest rights of way to the site. So obviously the toilet shower block is in here, and this is the field used for camping. You've got one right of way to the east of the site, but that is a greater distance away. And then the two closest ones are to the west. This part of the right of way runs on that access road, and then obviously you've got this one slightly further to the west. So these next photos are taken from that access road, which also forms part of that right of way. So here obviously you've got the existing vegetation, and then you have got the top of that rear elevation of the toilet shower block there. So the key planning issues for this one, obviously the principle of development. The toilet shower block would serve that existing camping use that already benefits from permission, visual amenity and biodiversity. The recommendation for this one is to grant, subject to the conditions obviously set out in section 17 of the officer's report, but I have provided a summary of those conditions on the side in front of you. So the first condition is the plans list. The second condition is for the toilet shower block to only be lit and operational when the site is in use for camping, which is between those dates on the screen. Condition 3 is for it to be wrapped in a matte dark green colour, so not the white as shown in those photos. The next condition is for no additional external lighting than that on the block already. Condition 5 is for a tree planting scheme to be submitted, and that is for the provision of standard British native trees within the hedgerow. And the last condition, condition 6, is for that hedgerow on the western boundary directly behind the rear of the toilet shower block to be retained. And I've just ended that with the site plan again. So that's everything for this one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Emma. I will now invite Zoe Linton to read the written statement submitted to Democratic Services. Good morning, Zoe.
Good morning, Chair. Mr. and Mrs. Bonham Lovett object. We wish to ask this committee to not grant this application. Instead, we ask them to show support for the conditions made in the schedule attached to the original granted application in 2019 through the proper democratic planning process. We believe a democratic planning process is intended to provide everyone in society with a level playing field on which to have an equal say, and we ask the committee to take particular notice of the comments and concerns made by the council taxpayers and residents in this area. This is a relatively small matter in the scheme of things, but the principle of a strong and proper democratic planning and enforcement process should remain the same despite the size of the application. We would ask councillors to send a clear message to those planning applicants who seek to circumvent the proper democratic planning process by riding roughshod over conditions attached to the planning schedules made through a clear democratic process. We would ask councillors to show both the commitment and appetite to allow proper planning enforcement to protect the welfare of the residents and the beautiful countryside of Dorset. The toilet block in situ is larger, different in design and colour to the block that was originally agreed would be adequate for this campsite and formed part of the original application. The value of the visual amenity of the area was considered important enough to be considered as a factor in the democratic planning process in 2019. And a condition was attached to the permission to ensure that the block would only remain in place for the 2 months the campsite is in operation. For the avoidance of doubt and in the interests of the visual amenities of the locality. To grant this retrospective planning application is to have a detrimental effect on the visual amenities of the locality. The block in situ is highly visible from the road and the nearby public footpath. It is also clearly visible from other countryside walks and footpaths in the area and from up on the ridgeway. It is an ugly utility building and is another blight on the surrounding beautiful countryside. In our opinion, the value of the visual amenity of the locality has not changed. It could still be beautiful if this application is rejected. Just going to the next one. Mr. and Mrs. Perrott object. This is the 5th application to develop the land around Buckland House, land that historically has not been used for agriculture or camping and parts of which are set aside as SNCIs. With each application, the majority of residents of Buckland Ripers have objected. The balance of planning is, however, in favour of any applicant, and the planning committee sometimes have to find reasons for refusal that would be resistant to any challenge. The applicant was granted permission in 2019 for a temporary campsite to be open 2 months a year. This was only possible because of the conditions stipulated, which provided the necessary balance in the planning decision. Paragraph 54 of the NPPF was employed, which says local planning authorities should consider whether otherwise unacceptable development could be made acceptable through the use of conditions. Paragraph 55 says conditions should be kept to a minimum and only be made when they are necessary, enforceable, precise, reasonable and relevant to planning and the development being permitted. So the 2019 application was and could only be granted permission through the use of the conditions. Compliance with the NPPF and local plan meant that without these conditions, permissions would have been refused. Condition 4 of the 2019 permission said that the toilet block could only be on site for 2 months a year. The reason given for this and other conditions was to protect the visual amenity of the area. Condition 1 approved the floor plans and elevations in the interests of proper planning. The current application seeks, without any given reason, to make a toilet block which lacks disabled access and is twice the size of the one approved in 2019, a permanent fixture. If it gains approval, it overrides conditions 1 and 4 of the 2019 permission conditions, which, because of the adherence to the local plan, the planning department thought necessary for the 2019 application to gain approval. The site development adjacent SNCIs, the road, the hedgerows and footpaths have not changed since 2019. Planning law remains unchanged. There is no reason why the planning department should think differently than they did in 2019. If when granting permission, then for a temporary campsite, it was thought necessary to stipulate a condition saying that the toilet block had to be temporary in order to protect visual amenity, then to grant this application permission now, with or without conditions, would simply make a mockery of the NPPF. I would urge the committee to continue to recognise the way the NPPF stipulates conditions should be used, uphold the 2019 conditions, protect visual amenity and allow the applicant to operate the campsite in a way he found acceptable in 2019 by refusing this application. Janine Beale, object. We wish to ask the committee to refuse the above application. In 2019, permission was granted for an overspill campsite in the grounds of the former Rectory Buckland House. This property has 2 sites classed as SNCIs and has always been classed as a residential family home. Permission was granted for the campsite subject to a number of conditions. Condition 1. Approved the floor plans and elevations in the interests of proper planning. The shower toilet block was considered of an adequate size for the amount of tents that was allowed to occupy the site. The toilet shower block in situ is of a much larger size and very different in design to the one that planning gave consent in the original application. This current application gives no reason as to why a much larger toilet block is now deemed necessary for an overspill campsite. Condition 4 stated that the toilet block could only be on site for 2 months of the year, July and August, while the campsite is in operation. The reason given for this and other conditions was to protect the visual amenity of the area. for the avoidance of doubt and in the interests of the visual amenities of the locality. Planning conditions were attached to the approval of the campsite for a reason. Since then, nothing has changed. Therefore, to grant approval of this application would override conditions 1 and 4 that were deemed necessary only 1 year ago. If retrospective applications are granted permission, then surely that makes a mockery of the whole planning system. There is no reason why the planning committee should think any differently now than when approval was given in 2019. We hope that the committee will take into consideration the comments of the council, taxpayers and residents who live in very close proximity of the campsite. We sincerely hope that this application is refused and the conditions stipulated in 2019 are upheld. Bear with me a moment. Daniel Smythe, Manager, Buckland Campsite, Support. At our main campsite at Higher Moor Farm, we run an award-winning campsite, and during our busiest times of July and August, when demand for local campsites is high, we now run a similar high-quality site at Buckland Campsite. As per our site licence and our high standards, we want to offer similar toilet and shower facilities here. Offering good quality toilet blocks is an essential requirement for running a good campsite, and this is why we wish to permanently locate the toilet and shower blocks that are in situ. Buckland Campsite offers 45 pitches, and under our site licence requirements, we must offer permanent toilet and shower facilities. We are happy to exceed these requirements, and guest feedback confirms that they like having adequate high quality toilet and shower facilities. It is because of this and recent COVID-19 secure guidance that we feel it necessary to have this toilet and shower facility. The economic and logistical costs involved in removing the current facilities are significant, and it would be sensible to have the block permanently in situ. We have been very supportive of the officers and fully support their report, and can confirm we are happy to implement the conditions of more landscape planting and make the existing block green in colour. It is vital for the future well-being of this part of Dorset that we offer high quality camping to its visitors, and hope the committee will support us in this application to ensure Dorset campsites are of the highest quality. The impact of COVID-19 has caused considerable loss of income this year. We hope very much the council will support us through this difficult time as we try to carry on in business. I am a local resident. I love this area. My mother's family have links to the area which go back hundreds of years. I do not want to spoil this lovely area. I want to keep it alive and kicking, supporting local people who desperately need employment. We all want to keep Buckland Campsite a family-friendly campsite which enhances the local amenity of this magical part of Dorset. It would also be sad, it would be so sad if the council do not support us in our endeavour to showcase this area to those who visit and stay with us. Kevin Flower, applicant. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for enabling us to address you today. My family and I have farmed in Nottington and the surrounding area for generations. We have maintained and farmed our land with care, giving full regard to the environment and visual impact our business makes on the community. After gaining permission for tent camping during July and August on one of our fields at Buckland Ripers, we have located a new shower and toilet block, which under licence conditions from the local authority has to comply with certain minimum standards, which we chose to exceed as an award-winning campsite. Being responsible operators, we specified the blocks to offer as much room as possible and be sustainable with water usage. This led to the block being a little larger. We have had to install steps to comply with health and safety regulations and illuminate them accordingly with low wattage LED lighting for safety. On talking to planning officers, it was agreed we should apply to leave the toilet block on site, thus reducing the environmental impact and cost of removal every few months. We have been in consultation regarding colour, tree planting schemes and lighting, which we fully endorse. Due to COVID, the bare root tree planting we were planning was delayed, but we have managed to plant an extra 50 metres of bare root hedging to encourage wild birds and insects. We now have the BS bare root trees from Ash Ridge Nurseries at Castle Carey ready to plant in January. We also will be planting a further 50 metre of hedging. After local reports this summer of hundreds of illegal campers on Chesil Beach, I feel it important that we offer COVID secure, low intensity tent camping that is regulated by the local authority for families wishing to visit our beautiful area. This will encourage the economy of the local area as we employ many local people and use other local business services for our campsite. I hope you will agree with the officer and support this application. Dickon Carpendale, Agent. Chairman, members of the committee, you have already heard from the applicant and his site manager why the toilet shower block needs to remain in situ throughout the year and how they want the quality of this campsite to be as good as their award-winning site at Higher Moor Farm, a short distance away in Nottington. I would like to make a few comments regarding the pertinent planning issues regarding this application. Originally, in 2018, this site was operated under the 28-day permitted development rights available for the temporary use of land for camping. Subsequently, permission was granted in 2019 for the site to be operated for 2 months of the year during the summer season. A shower and toilet block was approved as part of this application, with it being permitted to remain on site between the 23rd of June and the 8th of September each year. It is important to note the only reason for imposing this restriction was for the avoidance of doubt and in the interest of the visual amenities of the locality. A high quality toilet and shower block has been provided not only to meet the requirements of the site licence, but to ensure holidaymakers have a quality experience in a COVID safe environment. The only planning reason for preventing a shower toilet block being sited on the land throughout the year was visual amenity. Your officer's report confirms there are minimal public views of the current unit, and it has been agreed that it will be changed to a matte green colour, overcoming this sole reason for the condition being imposed in the first place. Whilst there have been various comments made by local residents regarding the application, many of these are not relevant to its consideration. The site benefits from a full planning permission for use during the summer and is subject to a site licence and careful management. With the showers and toilets only being utilised during the approved season, the current proposal to retain it on site throughout the year will have no additional impact upon residential amenity at all. We have been working carefully with your officers and the applicant fully supports the case officer's recommendation. I can confirm they are very happy to continue working with the council to ensure the colour of the units is changed and further tree planting is undertaken in addition to much already carried out, which will also satisfy your natural environment team. Thank you for your time and I urge you to support the officer recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sally. I appreciate that. I'm going to now invite Councillor John Worth, which is the ward member, to address the committee. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman and members. Yes, as we've heard, planning permission was granted in 2019 for this site and a toilet block, which was requested to be removed at the end of the season. The toilet block that was actually installed by the applicant, for whatever reason, is more or less 3 times the size of that which was agreed in that planning permission, and it remained after the 8th of September. Enforcement were informed of this and visited the site, as this was a breach of the current planning granted. When enforcement spoke to the applicant immediately said that they would be putting in a further planning application, so therefore any enforcement action is immediately stopped. Now we come to the position where this new block is 3 times the size of the original block and is not to be removed. Now the officer who granted the original planning permission, because it was granted by officers not by committee, deemed it necessary to put in clause 4 or condition 4 because of the visual amenity. I've driven down that road, and although there is some planting in and around that, you can see this from quite some distance away, and it is fairly stark. Admittedly, if it gets coloured green, it will be less obtrusive. But my contention, my feeling is that you get a grant of planning permission, which grants you permission for a toilet block of a certain size to be removed. You then go ahead and ignore that planning permission. You stick in a toilet block which is much larger than that specified on your original application, and then you apply for a retrospective when it's drawn to your attention that you're in breach of your planning condition. This is like somebody building or applying for permission to build a 2-bedroom house and then building a 4-bedroom house in its place. You know, we have to go along with what the planning permission is and not, you know, allow people to come back and say, oh, well, you know, I'll do this because enforcement came and knocked on my door. If they wanted to apply for a larger toilet block, why wait till enforcement goes knocking on the door? Also, much has been made about the COVID-19 crisis and COVID secure, etc., etc. This situation was in September 2019, well before COVID was even flagged up anywhere. So using COVID as an excuse for having a larger shower block, etc., etc., to my mind, isn't a valid reason. That's just an, you know, the current excuse for a lot of things is COVID this, COVID that. So I urge the committee to uphold the original planning condition, which is a smaller shower block, which is removed at the end of the season. I see no reason why that needed to be changed. The shower block was obviously deemed adequate by the applicant when they put in their original application, and therefore I see no reason to change this. Thank you very much, committee.
Thank you, John. Very kind. Now I'm now going to call on Emma Telford to respond with any salient points she may wish to clarify. Emma.
Chairman, Councillor Jean Dorset
Yes,
also indicated. Okay, sorry.
Okay, right. Well, actually, I will have a few words from Councillor Jean Dorset now before I go back to you, Emma. So, Jean, would you like to say a few words? With bearing in mind, of course, you were not part of the debate.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would like to say a few words. On paper, this is quite a minor matter in planning terms. It is a toilet block in a field. It's not a huge housing development or anything like that. But I feel that it's quite a major item in planning implications. Permission was granted, as we have already been told, for a toilet shower block in 2019, and it was granted with conditions. Those conditions, as we've already heard again, was that it would be green, it was one modest unit in size to be removed when not being used for 10 months of the year. We also had conditions about planting of trees and screening. And I note that some hedging has been planted with more to come. Condition 4 states, the toilet shower block shall only be sited on the land between the 23rd of June and the 8th of September. And that is quite specific. All of these conditions have been disregarded. Conditions, when applied to planning permissions, are not optional extras. They are there to put a boundary around the planning permission. And as I say, these have been disregarded. And in some respects, I feel it's quite disrespectful to the planning process. I do support the campsite, the temporary overflow campsite, having a toilet block, and I do want to support businesses. But I come back again. The design and access statement says about the toilet block, it is to be a temporary movable structure and will be inconspicuous. So to date, it has neither been temporary nor movable. Well, it may be movable, but it hasn't moved. And it is rather conspicuous. When you drive along the road, it is conspicuous because it's white. And yet we were told it was going to be green. It all boils down to this. How important does the committee feel conditions are? Are they worth putting in if the applicant decides to disregard them? And how valid does it make our planning permissions? How valid the conditions that we put on planning applications? I'm not in favour of this permission being granted. Thank you, Chairman and members.
Thank you, Jean. That's very kind. Okay, I'm now going to call on Emma Telford to respond with any salient points you may wish to clarify. Over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Chair. There is a few points I'd like to make. The first being that this application does need to be considered as submitted and on its own merits. The second, obviously, in terms of visual amenity, from Nottington Lane, as the photos show, only part of that block is visible, and it is considered that if it was dark green in colour as conditioned, and with the additional planting, that the block would not be obtrusive. In terms of the scale and the provision of the toilet block and of the facilities, it is considered that that is up to the applicant, but it's for us to assess the visual impacts of that block and the block of that size. And then the last point I would just like to clarify is that we are recommending a condition for the block to be wrapped in a matte dark green colour. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer, members?
I have Chairman Kate Weller and Nick Ireland. Whether they're of a technical nature, I'm uncertain at this stage, but no doubt they will tell you if they are or they are not.
Mine isn't. Mine's
okay, thank you. Well,
so Kate Weller's first, Chairman.
Kate Weller first, yeah. Okay, thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's a little bit of both, actually. The first thing was technical in that it's been suggested that this building is twice as big as the original application allowed, and also 3 times. So it would be quite useful to know how much bigger it is, if Emma's able to give us a clearer indication of the difference between the actual approval and the building itself.
Thank you,
and then I have something to say.
Okay, Kate, as long as it's not debate. Okay, I'm going to hand that back to Emma to answer that question. How much bigger is the actual application?
I don't actually have the original toilet shower block in front of me, and I have actually lost connection, so I can't look it up in the meantime.
Okay.
Emma, sorry, it's Anne here. I can look it up in a minute, Chair, but it'll take me a couple of minutes to look it up. So if Councillor Weller has something else to say, but I'll try and I'll let you know when I've got the details.
Okay, well, I'm going to, in the meantime then, Kate, to hand back to you if you've got another question of a technical nature. Over to you.
I don't have any further questions, Chairman. I just would like to take part in the debate when that starts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. In that case, then, whilst we're waiting, shall I go on to Councillor Nick Ireland? Nick, would you like to ask a technical question?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure whether it is technical or not. I note in the report that it mentions the Disability Act of 2010, Equalities Act, whatever you want to call it, and yet it mentions nothing else. It just mentions the fact that it exists, and in all the assessment in the report, it doesn't actually mention access for disabled persons. And you know, in my mind, and I'm looking at the license on our website about caravan and camping provisions, it says we need to give consideration to provision of disabled access facilities. So my question, I guess, is to Emma is whether we in law or can impose that as a condition or not.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick. I'm going to hand back now to Emma to answer that particular question. Emma.
I'm not sure whether anyone else will want to comment on this, but there isn't any planning policy for the provision of it. Obviously, we do seek to make it, and it is desirable for that access to be made, but there isn't anything for us to insist on it, unfortunately.
Okay. Do you want to come back on that, Nick, before we go on to anyone else?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that's actually correct. I think from the research I've been doing it implies that we can implement that as a condition, but we'll leave that to the debate maybe.
Okay, that's fine. Lovely. I've got a question, please, Emma. The original toilet block consisted of 6 cubicles in a removable unit. What we have before us now is 8 cubicles and 2 large shower units on a permanent structure. Now, it's been implied during the from the representations that, in fact, that the applicant has been in contact with officers in order to agree, was the word that was used, certain sizes and colours and what have you. Was that the case? Was the applicant in contact with the officers in order to discuss the current structure?
Sorry, it wasn't letting me unmute it. We had discussions about the conditions being recommended in terms of the dark green colour and the additional planting, but I was not party to any other discussions.
All right, because it was implied in the representations. That's all. Okay. Right now, do you have an answer to the question, the original question from Councillor Kate Weller?
Councillor Shortell, yes, I do. It's Anne Collins here. Unfortunately, my measuring tool stopped working, but there is a scale bowl on the plan, so very approximately, the original toilet block appears to be approximately 6 metres by 3 metres. I'm afraid I can't be exactly more accurate than that because I've got a problem, but 6 metres by 3 metres approximately.
Right. 6 metres by 3 metres. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Right. Is there any other questions of a technical nature?
Just one, well, from me, Chairman.
Okay.
During the July and August season, Emma, in the toilet blocks, where is the waste water stored?
Are you still able to see my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Yes. So there's a septic tank located to the rear of the block. And if you can see my cursor, that the septic tank is located behind the block, in between the block and the boundary hedging in there.
Okay. And if the permission is not upheld, not granted, would the are there regulations around to say that the septic tank has to be emptied and cleaned and not left in situ until the next season?
Oh, sorry, I thought someone else was speaking. The septic tank was as part of the made reference to as part of the previous application. So even with the previous toilet shower block, that septic tank was going to be on site there. In terms of the maintenance and clearance of it, that is obviously kind of a private matter, and that's for the applicant. If there was any complaints about smells or anything like that, that would obviously be a separate matter for environmental health to deal with.
Okay, thank you. That's it on the technical questions, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. There's no more technical questions. Before I open the debate, members, may I remind you to direct any questions or remarks through the chair, and I will invite members to speak in turn. Request to speak needs to be made via the virtual chat facility. Can I also remind members that the chat facility is for the smooth running of the meeting and must not be used for discussion on the merits of any application. Please keep microphones on mute when not speaking to preserve audio quality. I now open the debate to members. Who have we got first to speak, Bill?
Right, first of all, Chairman, part 2 from Councillor Kate Weller.
Okay, go ahead, Kate.
Thank you very much, Chairman. We find ourselves here again, don't we, with increasingly, I wonder why we bother to have a planning committee or to give permission when, if you feel like it, you don't have to comply. You can just come back later and we'll say, well, that was a bit naughty, but okay, fine. I think it was Councillor Dunseith who said it shows a lack of respect of the committee. It does, and I think that increasingly this is what, you know, I say we might as well save a huge amount of money by not having a planning committee or indeed a planning department, because people don't think that they're worth anything. That's a general thing, and we've got another thing on that coming up in a short while. I took a drive along Nottington Lane yesterday, and despite the fact that it was quite misty, it wasn't a lovely day like yesterday, but still that building is quite intrusive, and I think that even in a matte green it's going to be quite intrusive, particularly at this time of year when there aren't any leaves on the hedges and the trees. So that quite concerns me. There's the principle of why do we bother to give permission when nobody takes any notice? plus the obtrusiveness of it. But I'm more concerned about a number of things, and I've read all of the representations very carefully. The biodiversity plan, for example. Now, I note that Emma says because of the size of the toilet block, it's not actually necessary for a biodiversity plan as such on that, but that no biodiversity plan has been undertaken for the entire site. And I'm concerned that that hasn't been, doesn't appear to be, it's an enforcement matter, it doesn't appear to have been enforced in any way. And this is a very, very rural site. There's no getting away from that. So I would like to see that biodiversity plan in situ before anything else goes ahead. I'm also concerned about the soak away and the septic tank, which it's suggested is inadequate for the size of the block that was actually built. I'd like some reassurances on whether that is actually adequate. Having lived in rural areas and been reliant upon septic tanks, and I'm sure that there are other councillors in the same situation, very aware of how temperamental these can be, and how upsetting it is for your neighbours if your septic tank is not up to purpose. So I want a greater assurance on that before I go ahead in any way. I am concerned about the seasonal nature of this, and I understand the applicants saying, you know, that it will be expensive to remove it and take it back and everything else. I understand that totally. But we do that in our seaside towns. In Weymouth, we do that every year. We put in temporary facilities because of the increased usage, and indeed we managed to put a disabled ramp onto those facilities. So going back to what Nick Ireland was saying, I do think that as well as those very attractive steps with their flower beds and so on, we do need a ramp up to there. Disabled people do expect to be able to have access to everything that the rest of us do, and rightly so. So I'd like to see a ramp included on any facility that we have there, whether it's this or a revised one. I'm also concerned about the lighting, which definitely has an impact on natural life during the night. It disturbs badgers and foxes and small mammals generally when lighting is on, even when they are LED lighting. So that needs to be addressed. You know, and call me cynical, Councillor Worth mentioned this as well. The use of COVID as a mitigation for why this is so much bigger is just not so. This was built, even if we accept that people knew about COVID in November, this was in situ in September. So it's got nothing to do with COVID. It was the idea that they would take no notice, really. They would build what they wanted to build, and they have. It just seems to me they've got to pick and mix on what conditions they'll use and what conditions they'll ignore. So I'm really upset that these applications keep coming to us to change conditions when we've thought really hard about what conditions we want to place in the first place. That's my rant over, I'm afraid, Chairman, and thank you very much.
Okay, Kate, remembering of course that we're actually debating on the application as it stands, and I know you've got aspirations of what you'd like to see changed, but we've got to make a decision what we got before us.
I accept that absolutely, Chairman. Thank you. It's those conditions that have not been met, and the assurances that we need to know that everything around this application is up to scratch. It can and should be an award-winning site, but it can't ride roughshod over some important matters in order to get there.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, I'll go over to Nick. Councillor Nick Ireland, you're the next to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I don't particularly have an issue with the fact that a permanent toilet will be there. You know, I have one in my village, and it's used, you know, throughout the year on holidays, Easter, that sort of thing, and nobody notices it's there, to be honest. And I appreciate Daniel Smy's comments. I believe he's the manager of the site, about providing high quality toilets and provisions, and I can see why he would want to do that. And you know, having visited various campsites over the years myself, you know, provision of such makes it a far nicer experience for residents and for those people who use it. But the one thing I do object to, and I'm looking at the site license conditions on our website, this is Dorset Council's website, and one of the site license conditions is that the particular consideration should be given to the needs of the disabled in provision made for water points, toilets, washing points and showers. And I guess if it's a temporary structure that was going to be taken away, and you know, every year, it wouldn't be an issue so much. But this is a permanent structure, and you know, let's face it, if we were building a new cafe, if we are building toilets ourselves, we have to follow legislation and ensure that people aren't discriminated against, and you would provide disabled facilities. And this is a permanent structure; it's not designed to be taken away. And you know, to not is, I think, wrong. I don't know where we stand in law. I think we should be imposing a condition that all disabled access should be provided. All it needs is one unisex toilet combined with a shower, and that would be sufficient. But as it's designed, it provides none of those things. It's got steps, for God's sake. And you know, if Mr. Smy is genuine in his intentions in providing high quality experience for everybody, then it should be disabled access and fully compliant with all legislation. And so I don't have a problem with it being a permanent structure, but I do object to the fact that it's not disabled compliant, and unless there's a condition imposed on that, I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone else to speak?
Yeah, we have Councillor Anne Collins, Chairman, then Councillor Dave Barwell, then myself.
Anne Collins, you'd like to actually interject?
Sorry, Councillor Chisell, I was only going to come back on a point raised by Councillor Weller, sort of talking about conditions.
Oh.
You did comment on it as well, but we are considering the application in front of us. This is a new full application for planning permission. It's not a variation of condition application. So, you know, they have the existing permission for that temporary block, and this is a new application for this being an all year round permanent block. And whether they have or haven't complied with the conditions on that existing permission in respect of wider matters such as the imposition of the biodiversity mitigation plan, that is a separate planning enforcement matter, and isn't something that relates to this application being considered today, Chair.
That's what I thought.
Okay, my apologies, Anne, for branding you as a councillor. I do apologise.
Right, who do we have next? Well?
Dave Bolwell, please,
Dave.
Chairman.
Yeah, I'm now over to you, David.
Yes, Chair, thanks for the opportunity to speak on this. I'm getting rather sort of confused by some of these things. It's all very well for people to say that we have to look at the application in front of us, and that's quite correct. But the precedent surely was set originally. The original approval would never have been granted without the conditions. So in that respect, the conditions surrounding the original approval must be relevant in a way that can affect the judgment now. I don't understand why people are saying ignore them, because the fact, if we needed those conditions to get the first approval through, and those conditions are not there again for this approval, then how can we possibly grant it? That's all I have to say.
Thank you, David. Well, I think Anne did point out that this should be treated as a fresh application. So this supersedes the previous application in 2019.
I agree, Chair, with that. Sorry, can I come back on that one? The point is that as the objection letters have said, nothing has actually changed. So this fresh application would not, in my mind, have been approved as a permanent structure in the first case. Therefore, I cannot approve it as a permanent structure now without the same conditions being attached. So you can't attach these conditions because you can't have the structure removed because it's now applying for it to be permanent. So in my mind, I cannot support an application for a permanent structure.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is that it?
No, there's myself and, if you'll permit, Councillor Weller another shot, Chairman.
Okay, come in first then, Bill.
Okay, thank you. I've heard what Jean and Kate and John have said about the application, but if it's all about visual amenity, I think in the short term, the summer vegetation would hide any view of the block, and in the long term, additional planting would, after time, obscure any view from the local lanes. And I think the main point is about visual amenity, and that as it stands at the moment, from the pictures that we've seen, it isn't that obtrusive. And I recommend we go to the recommendation after Kate and Anne have spoken.
Are you proposing acceptance of the application, Bill?
I am, Chairman, yeah.
All right, before I can't go on then, do we have a seconder for that? That doesn't have a seconder, so I'll ignore that one and I'll go on and do it. Who do you have next?
We have Kate Weller.
Coming back to you, Kate.
Oh, unless
Chairman,
Anne,
someone's trying to speak. I don't know. Was that Anne?
I think Anne might want to say something about what I said. Is that correct, Anne?
No, Councillor Pipe, it's okay. I'm happy for Councillor Weller to make her comments. That's not a problem.
Okay, Kate. Sorry.
Okay, so back to you.
Okay, thanks very much. In principle, I don't have a problem with this. I come back to, and I am trying very hard to get my head around the idea that this is a totally new application. As a new application, I see the conditions that Emma has set with the green wraparound and the planting and so on. I would want as a condition on this application that we do have some biodiversity, if not a full biodiversity plan, some sort of mitigation on the impact that it will have on the environment in that area, on the small mammals and so on. I don't know how you word that, but I'm sure that Anne can find a way of doing that, so that we know that it's not causing a detrimental effect on this very rural area. I also want much, and I think the local people would want much stronger assurances that the soakaway and the septic tank are adequate for this increased size. And in that biodiversity thing, I would say the lighting, because there are recommendations on the lumens and so on to not interrupt the breeding patterns of insects and birds and so on, and I think that that's important in this area. And in terms of disability access, I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Ireland that these days you're building a new building, it must be DA compliant. So if those conditions are there and very strictly adhered to, I would not want to see another application coming back saying let's amend this a little tiny bit more. I could go along with it, but as it stands at the moment, I'm afraid I can't.
Kate, then, if you're proposing additional conditions for the existing application, we need to know exactly what those conditions are, and then we can take a seconder and vote on the amended conditions.
I have a potential seconder in Councillor Ireland, Chairman.
Okay. Do we have a proposal, first of all? Just to clarify from Kate whether she wishes to propose additional conditions to be applied to the current application.
Yes, please, Chairman. And I'm looking at my screen at the picture of Anne here. I'm afraid, Anne. to help me with the wording on that, so that it is very clear to the applicants, and I admire their wish to make this a superior campsite. I absolutely do. I know their other one is run very well, but I want to see that it has that DA compliance, and it looks as though Emma would like to say something about the biodiversity. I understand, Emma, that that there are restrictions on the size and so on, but what I'm talking about is the whole eco impact on this site. So not having lights that affect wildlife and so on, and those are the conditions that I want our officers to try to help me with, if they could, please.
If I could suggest your disabled access one, Kate, it would be to be adapted to enable full disabled access to toilets and shower units. I think that cuts it.
Yep, that's absolutely fine, Bill. Thank you.
Can you put that through the chair, please? Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Chairman.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm going to go back to Anne just to see if those conditions are relevant to be applied.
Chair, if members felt there was adequate justification and they were necessary to make this development acceptable, we could impose a condition regarding biodiversity. I might suggest that if that's the way we go, that members considering a proposal that delegates authority to the head of planning to approve, so that we then have the ability to agree the wording of those conditions in association with yourself as chair, because we don't have exact wording here with us today. But in terms of biodiversity condition, this is a retrospective condition, so it can't be a retrospective application. So we'd need to word it along the lines of something: within 3 months of the date of this planning permission, a biodiversity mitigation plan shall be submitted, which provides details of how the development will mitigate for the impact on small mammals, and include details of wildlife-friendly lighting scheme. And then we'd go on with a trigger to make sure that once that scheme was improved in writing by the local planning authority, it was carried out and those measures were retained, if that was along the lines of what Councillor Weller was thinking. In terms of a condition about disability, my only concern with that one is that to make this disability compliant, they'd be likely to need to put up a ramp. Obviously, as members have identified, they've only currently got steps. So it's likely we need to get some kind of plan showing a ramp. Phil, would you be happy for us to obtain that via a condition, or would you prefer for us to obtain that plan before a permission was granted? Could I have your thoughts on that, Phil, please?
Phil Kroger is our legal expert.
Chairman, I think the issue comes down to whether a ramp would affect other planning issues one way or the other. So in principle, it would be acceptable for a condition to require a scheme to be submitted within a certain time frame and then complied with. So to take the example when Anne was talking about the biodiversity scheme, you could require a scheme to facilitate disabled access to be submitted within 3 months of the decision, and then implemented once approved by the authority and retained. The practical issue is whether the design of a ramp would affect any of the other planning issues that are before you. But in principle, I see no reason why you couldn't control it by condition.
Thank you, Phil. Going back to you, Kate, I know you're proposing the introduction of further conditions. Are you happy with those as suggested?
Yes, I think I am, Chairman. Thank you. Can I just confirm, going back to the lighting, other than sort of very minor security lighting that might be required year round, this main lighting is all switched off when the campsite is not in use, isn't it?
Yes, Ms Telford, the planning officer, had actually recommended a condition that the lighting only be on when it's used, is essentially so to enable people to go and use the toilets in the night when it's dark, really.
Yeah.
Is my understanding.
Yeah.
Before you proceed to any vote on the on the condition, Chairman, I've got Emma who would like to provide clarity on biodiversity, and I'll go mute because my phone's ringing.
Okay, you go ahead and answer that, Bill, and I go over to Emma for to clarify that point.
I think the discussion has moved on slightly, but all I was going to say that a biodiversity plan wasn't considered to be required because of the size of the site, and one was carried out as part of the previous application for the camping on the site. But as part of discussions with the natural environment team, as part of this application, they did seek further planting enhancement, and that was to involve the inclusion of standard British native trees within the hedges, and that was to ensure bat foraging and commuting route was maintained and enhanced, and that is the justification for condition 5 on the recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Emma, that's fine.
Chair, Chair, it's Anne here. Would you like me to suggest some wording in terms of a delegation of authority if members are looking to make a recommendation with additional conditions?
That would be perfect. Thank you very much, Anne. Would you go ahead, please?
Okay. Delegate authority to the head of planning to approve, subject to the planning conditions as per the officer report, and additional conditions regarding the submission and implementation of a biodiversity mitigation enhancement plan, and details of providing disabled access to toilets and showers and facilities. Conditions to be agreed between officers and chairman.
Thank you. Kate, what's your feelings about that wording?
I'm happy with that. I note what Emma said, and that's very useful. But it's more than just bats that we need to be worried about. It is the nesting of birds and small insects and so on. And the wording that has been given to us there, I think can cover that if we can make sure that we're very, very much more comprehensive on that. You know, during COVID, and I am going to quote COVID in this instance, during COVID, we've all been more interested in the environment and natural history, and we've all watched Spring Watch and Summer Watch and Autumn Watch and all the other things, and know the impact that artificial light has on the environment. So we do need to be really quite strict on that now. Now that we know about it, we need to make sure that we mitigate the impact. Thank you.
Thank you, members. We have a proposition for the addition of further conditions. Do I have a seconder for that, please?
You have,
I'll second that, Chairman.
Councillor Ireland, Chairman, but Councillor Cocking has been waiting very patiently to speak. Are you able to take her before you go?
Yes, yes, I will, most certainly.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to. Thank you, Chair. It was only just to say about, I was just typing in the chat bar, but I wasn't typing quick enough. It was just to say that to make sure that we comply with the Disability Act, and that was the Human Rights and Disability Act, but Kate had already said that, so I'm happy to go along with that as long as we act within the Human Rights and Disability Act.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
You're right to go, Chairman.
Okay, so no other speakers?
No.
Right, well, before I'm going to put it to the vote, could you possibly please read out the conditions that are to be applied to this application, please, so that we're all clear as to exactly what we're voting for?
Okay, Councillor Shortall, it's not the actual conditions, it's the delegation, but delegate authority to head of planning to approve, subject to conditions, planning conditions, as per the officer report, and additional conditions regarding the submission and implementation of a biodiversity mitigation and enhancement plan to specifically address small mammals and the impact of lighting, and a condition in respect of disabled access to allow access to the toilets and shower facilities in accordance with the Disability Act, with those planning conditions to be agreed between the planning officer and the chairman of the planning committee.
That sounds perfect to me. Are you happy with that wording again, Kate? Councillor Kate Ware?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chairman.
And Councillor Nick Ireland?
Yes, happy.
Right, okay. In that case, no other speakers. So I'm now going to go to the vote by roll call. And I'm going to ask Mike Barron to come in first to vote with the additional conditions or delegations.
I'm sorry, but I'm still for refusal.
Okay. Right, Dave Bowell.
Refusal, Chairman.
Okay. Councillor Kelvin Clayton.
I'm still wavering both ways, Chair. On balance, I can support that amendment.
Okay. Councillor Susan Cocking.
I approve with the new conditions.
Okay. Councillor Jean Dunseth isn't participating. Councillor Bill Pipe.
For.
Okay. Councillor Nick Ireland for clarity.
For.
Okay. Councillor Leary is given his apologies. Councillor Kate Weller for clarity.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Sarah Williams.
Difficult, but on balance for, with the conditions.
With the conditions, thank you. Councillor John Worth is not participating. I'm in agreement with those conditions. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for, and 1, 2, 3 against. Is that correct, Dan?
2.
I made it 2 against, Chair. Councillor Barron and Councillor Bolwell were in favour of refusal.
That's true, because I counted John Worth and I shouldn't have done. I do apologise. 2 against. Yeah, you're right. Okay, that concludes this particular application. Thank you very much for your indulgence. Right, okay, that concludes the planning applications, and we now go on to item 6 on the agenda, and that is an update report, and that's for the potential enforcement action on Homestead Farm, Main Street, Bothenhampton, Bridport, D264BJ. And to remind, and I'm sure you don't need reminding, members of the committee, it's for the demolition of an original farmhouse and erection of a dwelling not in accordance with planning approval WDD 17002-888, as amended via the approval non-material amendment approvals WDD 19-0000355 NMA and WDD 19-0000624 NMI. And I now invite
Chairman, I've had a request for a 2-minute comfort break from a member.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Okay, and as I had said earlier, then on request we can have a 10-minute break. Are you in agreement? Everyone in agreement with that?
Yes, Chairman.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, Chair.
Yes, Chairman. Chat bar says yes.
Chat bar says yes. In that case, then, before we then go on to now, before I invite Kevin Perry, the Senior Enforcement Officer, to do a presentation, we'll now have a 10-minute break. So
back at what time, Chairman?
At just before 25 to 12.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, right, members. I'd like to welcome back members of the public who are joining the second session this morning of the Western and Southern Area Planning Committee, and members. I'd now like to do a quick roll call of committee members to see that we're all present. Councillor Mike Barron, are you there?
Still alive, yes.
Still alive. Councillor Dave Bolwell.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Kelvin Clayton.
Yeah, I've returned, Chair.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Susan Cocking.
Yes, I'm back, Chair.
Councillor Jean Dunseth,
I'm here, Chair.
Councillor Bill Pipe,
I am here, unmuted.
oh right, is that you, Bill?
Yes, it was. I beg your pardon.
Okay, okay. Councillor Nick Ireland.
Present.
Okay. Councillor Kate Weller.
Yes, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Sarah Williams.
Yes, Chair.
And Councillor John Worth.
Present, Chairman.
All right. Thank you. We're all present and correct. Duly refreshed, I hope. Okay. Just to remind members and members of the public that we're on item 6 of the agenda, and that's the potential enforcement action at Homestead Farm, Main Street, Bothenhampton, Bridport. And I would now like to invite Kevin Perry, the Senior Enforcement Officer, to introduce this item. Over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, and good morning to all the councillors. I'm representing this item on behalf of my line manager, Mr. Darren Rogers, who previously reported this matter to you in October. This is in relation to a development at Homestead Farm, Main Street, Bothenhampton, where, as Chairman previously mentioned before the comfort break, this is in relation to the an application in 2017 for the demolition of an original farmhouse and erection of a dwelling not in accordance with planning approval WDD 172888. Purpose of this report is really just to update members of the committee and seek your decision on the recommendation of my report. The report was put before you, as I said, in October as the result of a planning application that was submitted to committee for an amendment to the original scheme. In August of last year, this application was actually refused, and a decision to take enforcement action in October was deferred pending a notification from the owners of the property that they intended to submit a planning appeal. The appeal was supposed to have been submitted by I believe the date was the 14th of November. For a variety of reasons, that date wasn't met. However, I can update committee now and say that the appeal has been submitted. So the purpose of my report today is to seek your instructions as to whether or not we proceed with an enforcement action at this stage, or to delay that action pending the outcome of this Section 78 appeal. I won't go into a great detail about all the applications that have come in. There is quite a history to this property. As I said, in 2017, original consent was granted for the development of the property, a low carbon house. A variety of applications, non-material applications, have been submitted throughout the development. 3 applications have actually come in 2019, which were approved. We had 1 application in for an amendment to the original scheme with regards to the height and width of the building. That was in October 2019, that was refused. We had an application come in for the scheme to be completely amended with amended approved plans in August last year. That was refused, and that is the one that's the subject of the appeal that has been submitted. At the October meeting, the committee agreed to delay the taking of enforcement action, as I said, pending the submission of an appeal on the 20th of November, 15th of November, sorry. The appeal, as I said, has actually been submitted. It was submitted by the 20th of December, and that is an ongoing process. Whether that will be dealt with by way of a planning inquiry or a planning hearing is a matter to some degree in the hands of the planning inspectors. The appellants have requested an inquiry due to the complex legal arguments they wish to put forward and arguments that they wish to test from other objectors to the scheme which they feel may have to be done under oath by the inspector. As I say, the albeit that the appeal was submitted outside of the previous timescale, it has nevertheless been put in now. So my comments today really are to seek, as I say, committee's instructions as to whether or not we take enforcement action at this time, or whether we delay it pending the outcome of the appeal. I don't know at this stage, Chairman, do you wish me to read out my recommendation and then take questions from members?
That would be helpful, Kevin, if you wouldn't mind. Yes, please.
Probably be the easiest way forward. My recommendation is at this stage is that committee agree that no formal enforcement action be taken pending the determination of an appeal lodged by the owner, which, if refused, gives the council support in taking enforcement action and being able to successfully defend that decision at any subsequent challenge. Reason for my recommendation, committee, for the council to take enforcement action at this stage, we would be basing that action on the perceived harm being caused by the increase in height of the building from that which was previously approved. This would take a certain degree of time, officer time, and cost to the council. And subsequently, if the appeal that is currently being determined or considered by the planning inspectorate were to be upheld, that would be a waste of obviously time and money to the council. If, however, we delayed the decision to take enforcement action until we know the result of the appeal, and the appeal was dismissed, the inspectors in their decision letters will normally give a quite comprehensive view as to what they consider the harm to be in that development. Now, that would be support to the enforcement process when we actually issued an enforcement notice, to have that as a backup to defend any challenges that may be put forward at a subsequent appeal. The mere fact that we delay enforcement action at this time, pending the appeal, doesn't put us in any dangerous position in terms of being able to take enforcement action at a later stage. But I do feel at this stage that any enforcement action that we take has to be proportionate and reasonable. At this stage, I feel that to do this before the result of the appeal may leave us in a weaker position than if we had an inspector's decision should the appeal be dismissed. I think, sir, that as I say, there's not an awful lot point in me reading out the entire report. Committee members have that report in front of them. The public have that report available. I'm quite happy really to take questions on the report itself now, if any members have questions, and take it that way.
We do have three members who wish to speak, Chairman, starting with myself, followed by Councillor Jean Dunseith and Councillor Dave Bolwell.
Chair, sorry, Chair, it's Anne Collins here, because we've got some speakers as well, haven't we? We've got some written statements to be read out.
You've just taken away.
Sorry.
Quite all right. I just feel that we should invite Zoe Linton to read out the written statement submitted to Democratic Services first, if I may.
You're absolutely correct, Chairman. Absolutely correct.
Okay, so yeah, I'd like to then go over to Zoe, please, to read those statements.
Thank you. Simon Brodie. I note that survey work has been carried out on the as-built structure by the council's engineering officer. I concur that the as-built roof levels are similar to those obtained by my own surveyor. I do not understand why the farmhouse slate roof could not be seen. Using appropriate surveying techniques, this should not have been a problem. Perhaps the engineering officer could explain. What is now important is to check that the approval levels are compared with the as-built levels. There is a statement in the report that officers checked the plans. May I ask which officers checked the plans and why is it their analysis not presented for public scrutiny? A table of differences in height between approved and as-built is presented to this committee, with no explanation as to how these figures have been derived. Surely in this appeal scenario, all analysis should be presented in sufficient detail such that it is fit for thorough cross-examination. I do not think that the information submitted in the agenda notes is sufficient for any rational decision to be made on whether enforcement action should or should not be taken. I would further suggest that no decisions are taken which might imply acceptance of the figures in the table of differences in heights. Andy Partridge, agent. The council granted planning permission for the demolition of original farmhouse and erection of one new 4-bed low carbon house under reference WD D17002888. Subsequently, it is refused an application for demolition of original farmhouse in conservation area, erection of one new 4-bed low carbon house with variation of condition 1 of planning approval WD D17002888 to amend approved plans. Contrary to the officer's approval recommendation, and despite the fact that there were no objections from statutory consultees or the conservation officer, the appealants have lodged an appeal against the council's decision, which sets out their full statement of case, together with appropriate documentation. As previously notified via a formal notice to the LPA, the appealants have requested that the appeal be heard by public inquiry. This will allow a thorough airing of the issues for all parties concerned. Members will be aware that under Section 172 of the Planning Act, enforcement action is a discretionary remedy and is not an automatic response to a breach of planning control. An enforcement notice must only be issued if it is expedient. In the Ardagh Glass case, Ardagh Glass Limited versus Chester CC 2009, ENLR 34, it was held that there should be a balancing of advantages and disadvantages before enforcement action is taken. We argue in this case that the disadvantages significantly outweigh the advantages in the light of the submission of the appeal. Considerable and unnecessary additional costs will be incurred by both parties if an enforcement notice is issued, when an independent inspector will consider the matter fully at public inquiry. Furthermore, we would point out the effect of the development is finely balanced from the council's perspective. This is clear not only from the officer's recommendation to grant planning permission, but also from the fact there were local residents who wrote in support of the application, including a petition from a significant number of residents. With this in mind, the appeal would establish exactly what element, if any, is harmful and direct any enforcement notice to that element which is allegedly causing harm. We would suggest, therefore, that this is appropriate to let the appeal run and hold enforcement actions in abeyance until the position on harm or otherwise of the development is clarified. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Zoe. Very kind. Okay, now I'm going to call on Kevin Perry to respond with any salient points he may wish to clarify in relation to the written statements. Kevin.
Oh, thank you, Chair. If I could just perhaps answer some of the concerns voiced by Mr. Brodie. There was a query, and it is stated in my report that there's one measurement that we were unable to obtain. I've spoken to the engineer that actually carried out the survey for me, because we wanted to make sure that the plans that were submitted to the council just prior to the Christmas holiday break, and which will be the subject of the appeal, were correct. And I had a survey carried out. The one measurement that we couldn't confirm, we couldn't get a reliable height on, was the farmhouse slate, as mentioned by Mr. Brodie. The reason for that was that the engineers that did the survey for us went back to using a staff and level to obtain these measurements. The farmhouse slate ridge is not easy to get to from ground level, and we were therefore unable to get the exact height. But what I would say is that the farmhouse clay and the other building below it were measured, and they were found literally to be millimetres difference. So I think it's safe to assume, Mr. Chairman, that the measurements stated in the latest plans as built are accurate. The other thing I would like to say is that Mr. Brodie mentioned about a plans check. We have done our best to check the approved plans. The heights in there were a little awkward to try and measure from due to the nature of the plans, plus the fact that part of the case here is that the building as approved has actually been constructed slightly off footprint. So I think for us to be able to give a true and accurate height measurements from those original plans would have been difficult, and unfortunately we couldn't progress that before this meeting. But nevertheless, should committee decide that enforcement action should be taken, that is one of the major points that I will be addressing before we draft any notices. The other point that was raised by Mr. Brodie with regards to that we accept the heights without a sort of question, I believe is the way it was put. Apologies if I haven't got that quite right. But the purpose of the appeal is really for the inspector to assess this harm. And at this stage, I don't think that's a matter for me to report to you totally. I think that will become clearer as the appeal inquiry or hearing goes ahead. And as I previously stated, should the appeal be dismissed, the inspector in his decision letter will give strong views as to what he considers to be harmful about the development, and that will actually be used as part of the enforcement process. Mr. Partridge has mentioned one or two points there. I have to say that I do consider that delaying enforcement action at this time, not just on cost, not just on officer time, because those are not in themselves sufficient reason not for an authority not to take enforcement action. Cost should not really come into it, but I think that in a practical situation, it would be wiser to wait the outcome of the appeal. It doesn't place the council in any poor position for taking enforcement action at a later stage. So I think my recommendation, as it says in the report at this time, just to delay taking any action pending the outcome of that appeal would be better, sir.
Thank you, Kevin. I will now take any questions of a technical nature for the enforcement officer for Kevin. So does any member have any technical questions?
Mine's not a technical one, Chairman, so I shall give way to Councillor Jean.
All right.
Councillor Jean Dunseith, as long as hers of a technical nature.
Mine's not technical, Chairman.
All right.
Okay. I shall, if you'll allow me, Chairman, move to Councillor Bolwell if this is technical.
Yes, thanks, Bill. Yes, Chairman, it is technical, in as much as you're all aware that I sent a rather detailed email in to Kevin a couple of days ago, querying the fact that basically we've had drawings put in front of us before that showed approval versus as-built heights that Darren Rogers put forward. Now I'm getting really really upset about all these various figures that are flying around, and the ones in Kevin's report seem to indicate that our figures now agree with the applicants. And I want it made clear that these figures were only done after the last committee meeting, so they are not measurements that we've seen before. And I'm also querying why Kevin says it was very difficult to do comparison drawings, when in fact we've already had them put in front of us once before or more than once before by Darren Rogers. So the fact that this is going to be a public inquiry, I am concerned that we're still struggling to get correct relationship between the approved drawings and the as-built dimensions. So can I have some guarantees that we can clear this up before this becomes a public inquiry, please?
Okay, over to you, Kevin, to answer that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor, I think that my difficulty is that I've only had a relatively short time to digest Darren's report. I'm a little unclear as to where he got the measurements from which set of plans, because as you rightly say, there have been a number of plans submitted throughout this development. The only thing that I'm confident of at the moment is that I tend to agree with the plans that were submitted for the appeal, in that they do show heights as approved under the original scheme and heights as built. And one of the important things to note, and credit to the agents at this stage, I have to say, their plans actually show a greater increase in height than was originally shown in Darren Rogers' report. Now, obviously, before I consider taking any enforcement action, or before we consider serving of any notice, should it come to that, we would rigorously check all of the plans that have been submitted throughout this development to be able to present to you the correct as approved heights, and the plans that you actually see submitted today. As I say, we have checked those, and the as-built measurements, I am satisfied that within a matter of 1 or 2 millimetres are correct.
Yes, thanks, Kevin. I think I'm not arguing with the as-built dimensions. They actually agree with Mr. Brody's people that did the surveying. What I'm struggling to get to is the fact that the applicants' surveyors came up with one set of heights originally, then they got smaller, and now they've only got bigger again because we actually have been challenging them, and I think they've realised that we were going to double check the figures, and lo and behold, their figures now agree with our figures, or shall I say our figures now agree with their new submitted figures, because they are actually correct, whereas the previous figures were incorrect, which is what the residents and other people have been saying for the last sort of year and a half, that these heights that we keep having put in front of us are incorrect. Now, obviously, with this being a public inquiry, and I'm not casting aspersions on anybody's history or what they've done in the past, I would like a clean set of figures so that the inspector and everybody else can actually compare reality, and not some sort of little green and red lines on a drawing which were obviously incorrect in the first place. Just as an aside, I've got no argument with what you're putting forward. I think it's only prudent to wait personally for the inspector's report. However, I would like the information that goes forward to the inspector and everybody else to be as accurate as we can make it, please. Thank you.
And I agree with you entirely, Councillor. This is one of my reasons for the recommendations to withhold enforcement action at this stage, to give us sufficient time to be able to supply that information. Obviously, a planning officer will be doing a statement for this inquiry on behalf of the council, and I will be assisting in trying to identify all of the plans that have been submitted with all of the NMAs that have come in, and double checking on all measurements. But as I stated now, I am relatively satisfied that the plans that have been submitted to the inspector, and I think this is the important thing, that those heights that are quoted there are correct. So to some degree, the only other height measurements that I am generally concerned with is to go back to the 2017 original application and try and obtain heights from those. But and then we can feed that information to the inspector. He will be able to give a good assessment of the harm that possibly is being caused by the additional heights, and arrive at a proper fit decision. But that is something I will be doing over the next few weeks with planning colleagues.
Okay, Kevin, thank you for that. And could we also not lose sight of the fact that the building is actually slightly, albeit by a couple of degrees in the wrong position, and it's also closer to Main Street. I mean, although it sounds a minor thing, this has meant that the mass of the building is actually closer to the Main Street, and because it's on a slope, it's higher. So I don't want to lose sight of that as well. It's sort of getting lost in all the complexity of this case, but I think it's pertinent and it needs to be noted.
No, I agree with you.
Thank you very much for your help, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. And I'm sure that Kevin will confirm that the figures that are presented to the planning inspector will be the latest versions and double checked by him before they're presented.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay, Chairman, thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions of a technical?
I've got a technical question as for procedure. Is it the appellant's decision to go to a public inquiry, or can this be resolved through the hearing process? Can anybody answer that?
Councillor, that actually is a decision for the planning inspector to decide at the end of the day.
Okay.
The reason for the appellants deciding on an inquiry is that they believe they have some rather complex legal issues that need testing by the inspector. The only true way for an inspector to test these matters is under oath, and that's why they've requested the public inquiry process. We have actually been in contact with the inspectorate as an authority and stated that we feel that this can be dealt with by way of an informal hearing, and we could still question the matters that are raised by them. So the two arguments have been put forward. That now is the matter for the planning inspector to decide the final procedure. Okay. But at the end of the day, that I don't think will have any adverse effect on the outcome, whichever way that goes. It's just for him to decide whether he needs to hear the evidence under oath or whether he's quite happy to sit in a hearing and hear it.
Okay, moving on then, Chairman. Calvin Clayton has a question whether it's technical or not. I'm uncertain at this stage. So,
Councillor
Clayton, Chairman.
Sorry, Councillor Shortell, it's Anne Collins here. I have a live update for you. I've literally received an email from the Planning Inspectorate about the appeal, and they have determined it will take place via a public inquiry. Due to the very contentious nature of the appeal, it will require things to be explored via cross-examination. We've just received that email in the last few minutes, so it will be a public inquiry in due course.
Very latest information.
Hot off the press. Can't get better than that, Chairman.
There we go. There we go. And bearing that in mind, is there any other questions of a technical nature?
Calvin Clayton, possibly. Calvin, can you confirm it's technical or not?
Technical question, no.
No. Okay, I shall move on then.
Okay, I know.
To Kate Weller, Chairman. Kate Weller.
Oh, Kate Weller, sorry. Councillor Kate Weller.
Thank you, Chairman. Kevin, nice to see you. Haven't seen you for ages. Happy New Year to you. Page 42, Kevin, in your report gives a little tiny plan saying plans are submitted with difference in height between as approved and as built. Really, really straightforward diagram that. Can we assume that is a good figures to go by? Everything else seems to be very jumbled there. I agree absolutely with everything that Councillor Bowl has said. We need to get this really whittled down to clear information, and that seems to me to be really clear information. Can you confirm that that is the case?
Can I hand that back to you, Kevin, please?
Yes, hello, Councillor. And Happy New Year to you. You say page 42 of my report. My report wasn't 42 pages long.
Well, whatever I've got ModGov in front of me. So let me see if I can give you a better clue on that then.
Perhaps a paragraph reference.
It's agenda. It says agenda item 6, page 6.7.
So what you're giving there, Councillor Weller, is the agenda page number. Whether Kevin's got that, I don't know.
Sorry,
that's okay.
Kevin.
That's all right. To save you time, Councillor, I've found it.
Good.
The table that is referred to there does show the differences between what we now know has been constructed and what we believe to be the approved heights. So at worst, the bedroom cottage, for example, which is the worst example, is 81 centimetres higher than we believe the approved plan showed.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I thought. And as I say, these sorts of figures, some of them, as I say, I agree with Councillor Bowles, some of them are incredibly, it's incredibly difficult to ascertain exactly what's happening here because it's been going on for such a long time and there have been so many iterations. But that's great. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Is there any more questions of a technical nature?
Those are the technical questions, Chairman.
Thank you. In that case, I now open the debate to members. Who have we got speaking first?
Right, there is myself who was at the top of the queue, but I shall give way to Councillor Jean Dunseith, Chairman.
We'll take Councillor Jean Dunseith first. Yes, Jean.
Right, if I can. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to suggest that we take no action on enforcement at this time until we know the outcome of the appeal and get the inspector's decision and recommendations. We'll then be in a better position to take any enforcement action we deem necessary, and we would have a clearer legal position. Thank you, Chairman.
If that is a proposal from Councillor.
May I speak? As that conforms exactly what the recommendation is, can I take that as a proposal to accept the recommendation?
Yes, I'm happy to propose that, Chairman.
And I'm happy to second that, Chairman.
Who was? Oh, yeah. So that's Bill. Bill, you're seconding that. Do you wish to say anything, Councillor Bill?
Very little over and above what Councillor Dunseith has already said. You know, as we wait the definitive decision of the inspector, I think all potential enforcement action should at this stage be halted.
Did I hear Councillor Nick Ireland wishing to speak?
I have Kelvin Clayton, Chairman.
Kelvin Clayton, sorry. Go ahead, Kelvin.
Thanks, Chair. I don't think I've got a great more to add. It's good news about the public inquiry, but to be honest, it's got to the point where I just don't feel competent to make any judgments on the very technical and legal issues. So I think it is best option to allow it to go to appeal, where hopefully these issues can be examined forensically.
Yeah, point taken. Thank you, Kevin. I agree with that. Anyone else wishing to speak?
I believe everybody's been done. If there are other members, can you just say so now, please?
Before I go to vote?
Yeah.
No.
No
Okay.
RTS, Chairman.
Pardon?
No further RTS.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Right. Okay. Then now I will now if there's no more deliberation and members are content that they have heard the entire presentation and debate, I'll now take a vote by roll call, and I'm going to start off with Councillor Mike Barron.
In favour, Chairman.
Sorry, could you repeat that, please, Mike?
In favour, Chairman.
Can I repeat that again, please?
In favour.
In favour, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Councillor Dave Bolwell.
For, Chairman.
Yep. Okay. Councillor Kelvin Clayton.
Yeah, support, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Susan Cocking.
For, Chair.
Thank you. For clarity, Councillor Jean Dunseith.
Yes, I support, Chair.
Thank you. For clarity, Councillor Bill Pike.
In favour, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Ireland.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Kate Weller.
For.
Councillor Sarah Williams.
For, Chair.
Councillor John Worth.
For, Chairman.
And I'm in favour also. That's unanimous.
Good.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, that concludes item 6 on the agenda. We'll now go to item 7 on the agenda, appeals decisions. Members, I direct your attention to notice appeals and appeal decisions, particularly with regard to material considerations and how it will impact on future deliberation. Anne, is there any appeals that you wish to bring to the committee's attention?
Thank you, Councillor Shortell. Not this month, but I will be doing so at next committee in February.
We'll very much look forward to that, Anne. Thank you. We'll now take item 8 on the agenda, and that is any urgent items. I have no prior notification of any items of business which is considered to be urgent pursuant to section 100B 4B of the Local Government Act 1972. That is the final item on the agenda, and so therefore I bring this meeting to a close, and I would like to thank everyone for their indulgence and wish them a very happy and safe new year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.